Welcome to Three and Out here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, and Ben Troop. Glad you're making us a part of your day. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So appreciate you joining us. A lot to get to on the show. Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, will join us on the show. We'll chat with him about a story he put out on ESPN.com about the states, especially in the Southeastern Conference, who have already passed name, image, likeness laws and how that could affect them as early as July in some cases. So he will join us coming up here in hour number one. Also, Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation, will join us later today, hour number three. And we will get the very latest with the FCS playoffs, which are set to start this weekend. So he will join us coming up as we lead you towards Braves baseball, Braves and Yankees later tonight, 5:20. We'll have pregame coverage. First pitch at 6:35 again after the Braves fall 3-1 last night to the New York Yankees. So a lot to get to here on the show, but obviously as we went off the air and hand you over to Braves baseball yesterday, BJ and Ben, the verdict in the George Floyd case, and really not just that decision, but it kind of took us back to all the things that have happened over the past calendar year in regards to since that incident happened, all the social justice causes that have kind of speared off of that, and how sports has kind of been at the forefront of a lot of that here in 2020 and now back around into 2021.
Yeah, what I appreciate the most about yesterday was, we understand that some things just trump everything else. When you talk about what is sports' role as far as social justice or social injustices, a lot of these things that are happening, the people that play these sports are saying, look, we're going to be able to speak on behalf of the people we represent, whether you like it or not. NASCAR, I think, was at the forefront. NASCAR and what they did for Bubba Wallace, they did not have to do that. We talking about each sport has its own traditions, good or bad. And NASCAR, they usually roll to the beat of their own drum. They got behind Bubba Wallace. And I don't believe that every single NASCAR driver and fan wanted to do that. But they understood the greater good of what they was actually doing. Kylan Hill and what he did, getting the flag changed. Mississippi State, Kylan Hill from Mississippi State, doing it in the state of Mississippi. And I got to keep saying this. I don't want to look past the contributions of these WNBA women. The Atlanta Dream got their owner, got her out of there. She did not. She was an owner, but didn't necessarily agree with what her team was doing politically or not. She's no longer the owner of that team anymore. And I think Renee Montgomery, who was a WNBA player, is now part owner of the Dream. So what I seen last year was we're not going back. When you saw more than an athlete by LeBron James, he was putting the world on notice. We're not going back. We are, social injustice, and you guys, we doing the demonstrations and being in the bubble. I think those type of things are great, but that's a moment in time. This momentum is going to keep going from the college level to the pro level so I just applaud last year and even up until now, because sometimes you got to know it's okay to do it. LeBron gave permission to every athlete. It's all right. I'm the best athlete in the world, and I'm gonna go out there first. And then you kind of saw it like steamroll. And I just think that I'm proud of these athletes because, like I said, they are much. Kylan Hill, to be a current athlete, putting your name next to that, when that could have potentially, dare I say, ruined the rest of his athletic career. You know how people do? So shout out to everybody. NASCAR, WNBA, NBA, NFL, baseball, all the commissioners. I just applaud everybody involved, because I don't think that everybody understood what was going on, but nobody, like I said, BJ and Kevin, just because I don't agree doesn't mean I need to be a part of the resistance. And I appreciate them not being a part of the resistance, just going, just not necessarily going with the flow, but understanding this is much bigger than the sport we play. We just utilizing the sport we play to get the word out.
Whether it's been George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, others tragically beat, how powerful is it when these athletes speak up?
It's the greatest. It's the greatest because I'm not saying that these players aren't fearful of what could happen, because their livelihood is on the line, depending on who they are. But they understand too, I'm not going to always be in this position. So let me utilize my voice and my platform while I have it. And like I said, it's much easier to do something when we're all doing it because I don't got to stand by myself. LeBron James, I mean, he's big enough to stand by himself, but how many people compare to him? Not many. But Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Kylan Hill, what was it, TCU? I think back in the day tried to unionize. This is kind of like
Northwestern.
Northwestern, I'm sorry. I think this is like a culmination. And like I said, it takes time to do this stuff. I mean, a lot of these coaches didn't understand, but look at who you recruit. A lot of the fans didn't understand. Look who you root for. And if you can root for me on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, as my grandfather would say, son, listen, if they like your rhythm, you got to make sure they like your blues too. They got to like, they can't pick one without the other. And I just appreciate that because they'll come on to me, hey, Ben, you like what these players are doing, not doing. I'm like, I love it. Because if not now, when? There is no good enough time. Hey, man, just hurry up and wait. It's all this, just hurry up, but wait. No, waiting is over with. So Colin Kaepernick, I salute to you because he did it when it was not popular. And make no mistake about it, it ain't popular now. But I think Kevin and BJ, look, we have sons and daughters coming up in this world that might play a sport. And BJ, I know your little man. People gonna catch hell with him. I just think that at the end of the day, I want the ones coming behind these athletes to know it's okay to be more than just a sport you play. That's the biggest thing is shut up and dribble. No, you shut up. The reason why I dribble is because I'm doing for my family, but I understand that it's much bigger than me, man. So I applaud them every sport, but nobody has done more or does more than the WNBA one. Nobody does more than them, but they always gonna be pushed down when LeBron James speaks or the NASCAR. So I don't want to take away from all the women in the WA do because they fighting every single day. So I applaud every athlete, regardless of gender. But shout out to them WNBA players because they lead the way every single day.
And again, BJ, as you said, it's kind of started a role of activism, and I would say there's always some of that underlying with sports, like, hey, I'm going to help out the community, but maybe not necessarily in the way we've seen in the last year or so really come to the forefront.
I was going to say, Ben, I know I've talked with you a lot about your perspective, your perspective as an athlete, your perspective now. You've seen it, like Kevin said, evolve to where it is one of your first and foremost sort of responsibilities. It is something that is very commonplace. There's a powerful unity amongst these high profile athletes. I think it's very meaningful. I think it's very important. And I think it's something that's very inspiring. And I think you're seeing it, like you said, across all sports. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just becoming a part of the norm. Things have to happen consistently for it to become a part of the norm. And I think now, bigger than ever, people are not letting what the consequences keep them from doing it. That's when I was in college, ain't no way. Nope. I mean, and because and not just me, that just it wasn't going. Them veterans, them dude, you play football, you play basketball, you play baseball, that's it. Because it would take too much to get us all on one accord. Now, I mean, Trevor Lawrence would go, hashtag we want to play. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. And it just they don't send out tweets. They'll send out text messages. So, like I said, I applaud these players because NBA will throw up a flare that the NASCAR catch on to. Oh, you see what they're doing? NASCAR throw up a flare, the baseball catch on. That's what I like the most is they ain't calling each other. They saying, hey, we're going to do ours, and hopefully y'all will fall out. And they did it. To me, the unity in sports now, man, it's crazy because, like I said, I mean, when you start, I met Adam Wainwright, right? I'm fanboying it. I'm gonna tell you, they go Adam Wainwright. I'm finna interview him. Hey, Ben, go interview Adam Wainwright, right? Adam Wainwright said, I'm sitting here with Ben Troop, University of Florida. I'm like, and I'm looking at him like you know who I am? Like, yeah. And to me, that's what this did. There are people who didn't even know I knew who you were. Like, I know who you are. LeBron retweeting people. So yeah, I think it's great. And at the end of the day, I don't want this to be a moment though. I want to get back to normal in life, but not in sports. Life, yes, but sports, no. I want this to become the norm because you know how it is, Kevin and BJ. If it gets back to how it used to be, we'll just say, remember back in 2020? I don't want to be that.
Well said. We've got a lot more to come here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Stay with us. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. I'm glad you are with us. We'll chat with Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, coming up in about 15, 20 minutes here on the show. He's got a piece out today talking about how potentially SEC teams, and there's 6 of them presently, that could benefit from name, image, likeness as early as July 1. So we'll talk to him about that coming up in just a little bit. But Braves will be back tonight, 5:20, a little early dip for us here on 3 and Out. But last night went toe-to-toe with the Yankees. BJ and Ben got to the late innings, 3 walks in the 8th inning. Matzik, 2 earned runs, gets nobody out, and you lose in heartbreaking fashion to the Yankees. Those are the tough ones that you hate to lose because you played so well for 8 innings and just didn't finish.
I was going to say, Kev, I wanted to get your thoughts on the bullpen. I know Matzik has been really good this year for the most part. His ERA is still in the 2s, even after the walks and the runs. But where's kind of your confidence level at here? I know offensively it is what it is with the injuries, but what's your confidence right now with the bullpen?
I mean, that's if your frustrations are going to be anywhere right now, that's where it needs to be. I mean, Charlie Morton pitched well. I think the offense, I mean, heck, 2 out of 3 games against Chicago, you scored double digits. So, I mean, the offense is actually looking good. Last night, you're in the Bronx. Jameson Taillon pitched pretty good. The Yankees still going to have good pitching out there, but yeah, when you have a lead late and you can't hold it, that's frustrating, and it doesn't seem like it's consistent. In that it's the same guy, right? I mean, it's not like it's Matzik every time, or it's Luke Jackson, or it seems like it's a different guy every night. And maybe if you're Brian Snicker, you just aren't pushing the right buttons for whatever reason, or the guy you go with that night just happens to be the one that gives it up. But to me, it's not been that it's just mass hysteria in the bullpen. It's just that it's never the same guy you expect to be the letdown, right? I mean, so I think that's tough when one guy's struggling, you can kind of work around that. When you have no clue, is it going to be this guy tonight, or is it going to be this guy tomorrow night, or maybe they'll have good stuff. I think that's frustrating, and I think the Braves are obviously trying to figure that out. It's still early in the season. The whole key to, as I've said a lot, the whole key before the All-Star break is to not play yourself out of it. If you can hang around, All-Star break comes, put it in gear, and that's when teams make their move, you're fine. But it is certainly troubling that you can't really seem to grasp any kind of consistent footing right now as a team.
And Kevin, I mean, I know a lot of times when this Braves team, the consistent theme, even since I'm gonna go with the Acuna era, since he's been on the team, has been the bullpen. I mean, sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't, but it's been consistent, even with them winning, the division the last 3 years. Can they? I mean, is this the part of the team they're gonna have to find a way to overcome? I know that's harder. I know that's easier said than done because you're gonna need them to do that job. I understand that runs help starting pitching, and you need those closers to come in, that bullpen to come and do their job. At what point does this become, a cause for panic? I know it's still early now, but we running out of games to start saying, well, it's still early. As you said, don't play your way out of it in the All-Star break. I mean, you're gonna have the same bullpen, after the All-Star break. At what point does it become panic?
I mean, not yet. Again, baseball is so many games. And again, as long as you have games left, I think you're still fine. But I think the good news is, and we'll get to this later, I know Gary Sheffield talked about the way the game is played in relation to kind of how he watches it. I think the good news is the Braves' problem is almost every other team's problem. Just because go back to the 90s, even the early 2000s, what won games? Starting pitching, 6, 7, 8 innings of great starting pitching. One guy that you trust comes in and finishes the game off. Now, I mean, I think our expectations have become so lowered for even elite starting pitching that you're like, even the guys like Kershaw and others are like, I'm really saving you for the late in the season. Give me 6, I'll take you out, and we'll let 5 guys try to finish this. That used to not be the case in baseball. So obviously, every time you walk out there and say, now we're going to go with this guy, that's just one more possibility and one more spin of the wheel that maybe he doesn't have it tonight. So I think when you look at bullpen issues, I mean, it's pretty much every team in Major League Baseball that has bullpen issues. I mean, the Dodgers are pretty solid. The Yankees, when you get to the back end, are pretty solid. But you look around baseball, what's the strategy now? Get the starter out, get Max Scherzer and Strasburg out of the game, get DeGrom out of the game, make him throw 100 pitches, and we're going to go feast on whoever they throw out there out of that bullpen. And that's a winning strategy for a lot of teams. So it's not unique to Atlanta. And because it's kind of everybody's problem, I don't know that that's the sole reason it costs you, because you blow a lot of baseball games and other teams blow a lot of baseball games because bullpens are just designed and put together much differently than they were even 15 years ago.
You know what's interesting about the Braves bullpen and trust, and you were talking about trust there, and we've asked, hey, what pitcher, what bullpen arm do you believe in if you have to go to the pen? And we've said, hey, maybe Matzik, maybe Martin when he's healthy, maybe when he's at his best, Will Smith, Newcomb's been all right. There's one pitcher on the Braves roster who has not given up a run. He's pitched 6 1/3 innings. He has 0 earned runs. His name is Luke Jackson. And I know, Kevin, he is inefficient with his pitches sometimes. He walks a lot of guys and goes deep into counts. But when we talk about trust, I mean, if you look at the numbers, does Luke Jackson earn more respect than baseball's giving him?
Well, again, you're tied to roles, and I hate that. And to me, it's kind of disrespectful. And Ben maybe is an athlete. I'm wrong on this, but I always hear around baseball, guys just want to know what their role is. I'm the 8th inning guy. Well, why can't you be the 6th inning guy? If you're the man coming out of the bullpen and we got bases loaded and we're up 2, that might be the game right there. So I think it's just the way we tell these players. I mean, when you flat tell me I'm the 7th inning guy when I don't pitch the 7th inning, you're like, well, what's going on? And I don't know why baseball's kind of fallen to that. And I think Luke Jackson's one of those guys where you've kind of told him what his role is, and he's not really going to come in a lot of late inning, high leverage situations. I don't know why. But he's not. I wish I had a better explanation for that, but maybe it's also a case of late innings. He walks a lot of guys, and that's not really conducive to 8th, 9th inning type stuff. So, yeah.
No, I get all that. I was just asking for all the, trust talk in the bullpen. Should we trust Luke more than we are? I guess look at his stats.
Somewhat, but I mean, I think we trusted Luke Jackson when he was the closer, and he did just fine. I think the Luke Jackson thing is kind of, I don't want to say a total fan creation because, yeah, he has blown some games, and yeah, it's rough at times, but I think that's kind of been the narrative around Luke Jackson more than the times he's actually come in there and pitched pretty well, which obviously outweigh the bad because he's been with the Braves team for 3-4 seasons now. So obviously the Braves believe in what he can do. Maybe you do see him in a little different role, but to me, it's just some nights you have it, some nights you don't. And I think it's hard for Brian Snitker and company to get a grip on that when you don't know who it's going to be, right? If you knew, hey, Tyler Matzek's been bad 2 or 3 times in a row, maybe we don't go to him. But when he's been pretty good and then he's bad, I mean, that's and it's not the same guy every time. So, yeah, I kind of feel for Brian Snitker. It's when you get out there, it's an adventure to finish the game for sure with Atlanta right now.
And Kevin, I mean, the whole thing about it is too, how much, if you're in that bullpen, like you said, look, man, I don't know. I'm supposed to run out here the 6th or the 7th, but it's a group effort. As you mentioned, it's like, it could be, we might have 5 guys run out here, and the whole thing about it is how much does that, I guess, hurt a pitcher's development when you're going, well, look, man, I mean, I'm going to run out here, and the earlier I run out, the more I can suck or stink it up because somebody else is coming compared to, look, man. And let me say this the right way, because I don't want to. They don't suck. I don't like to use that word. They don't suck. In the words of Kevin Thompson, wet the sheets a little bit because somebody else is coming. How much does that hurt a development of a pitcher when I know, well, dude, I'm not really asked to win the game. I'm here to ask to just not lose the game. Yeah,
and I wish teams would quit doing that to pitchers. Your job is simple: get dudes out. If I need you in the 8th inning, get dude. I mean, to me, I don't like boxing guys into, hey, this is your role and this is where you feel comfortable. Your job is to go out there and get guys out.
Kev, let me ask you this, because when did that start? Because I'm not a baseball historian, but I hear a lot of, the baseball writers talk about how the bullpens were used much differently a generation ago. When did kind of the over-specialization start?
I mean, I guess you could say in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, you started seeing that closer role become more and more prevalent. And then it kind of just went from there where you had your starter and your starter was expected to try to push you a long ways, and then you had the guy you'd bring in late, and if it got away, I mean, I like to share a story like my dad used to tell me. He's like, son, when I was a kid, one of those things, and I'm sure I'll tell my sons that at some point, but it's like, he's like, if you were a bullpen guy, you probably weren't that good. Right? It's like, there's a reason you weren't starting. It's because you weren't that good. Now you have guys whose sole purpose is to come in there and throw 100 miles an hour. That is it. But I think we've seen that kind of expand mid 2000s, maybe into that. Hey, you're the 7th inning guy. You're the 8th inning guy. When everybody started to really throw hard. I think in the 90s, you had your closer, you had your starter, and then you'd have guys like, hey, this is my ground ball guy. Like, hey, I'm in a tight spot. He's a sinker baller. I'm going to come in here and try to get a double play. Or this is my left-handed guy. If we have a tough lefty, I'm going to bring him in. It doesn't matter if it's the 8th inning, he's just going to come in and get the out. I think the new rules where you have to face 3 batters, maybe that changes that some. But I think really in the last 10 years, especially, you've seen like, my starter's only going to give me 6. I'm going to take him out. And then I'm going to get this guy. Like, the whole game is get me to here, and I'm going to work it backwards, right? My starter's going to get me here, and then all things in line, I'm going to go 9th, 8th, 7th, and we win. And that's kind of the thinking in baseball. And I hope you get, again, with a 3-batter rule, maybe we get away from that a little bit more and just say, look, I just need guys who can get outs, period, end of story, and go from there. We got to step aside. We got Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, coming up on the flip side. No Ronald Acuna in the lineup for the Braves, so likely won't see him until Friday against the Arizona Diamondbacks. When we're talking college football, Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, great piece up on name, image, likeness, and what could be happening for some states as soon as July. We'll get the very latest with him on that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here all across the show. As again, coming up, college football. We just had a bunch of spring games in this past weekend in the SEC. But Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, a great piece on how some teams in the SEC could benefit from name, image, likeness as early as this summer. And Dan Murphy joins us here on 3 and Out. Dan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. Now, Alabama was one of the most recent leaders to sign the name, image, likeness bill into law, which will go into effect July 1. How do you see this getting implemented? I know in your piece you laid out the number of states who have laws that are passed and are waiting to go into effect, which are quite a few. And then there's obviously quite a few states that have nothing. How does this get underway starting in July with states like Alabama, Florida, and others set to enact name, image, likeness rights?
Yeah, I mean, those states are going to get going here in, I think we're just a little bit more than 10 weeks out, right? This is coming up pretty fast. And I think the NCAA is still holding out hope that Congress is going to make a federal law that will apply to every college, so that everyone will be on an equal playing field, and that they'll have some restrictions baked into that. The NCAA themselves are still, there's still an option. The NCAA decides to make a rule change that applies to every school. But as we get closer and closer without any resolution, right, this is a problem that's been brewing for, at least 18 months or a few years, depending on how you look at that timeline. And they haven't figured out some of these details yet. So the odds that we get to July 1st, and some schools have laws that allow their players to start making money and other schools don't, that becomes more and more of a reality here as we approach the summer.
And I guess a follow-up, assuming there's not a federal law, how are conferences potentially going to handle not only this year, but in future years, having some teams that can monetize and some teams that can't monetize off of the likeness?
Yeah, so I talked to Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, about that a few months ago, back when it was just Florida who had their law that was going into place in July. And he said, hey, I'm expecting a bunch of other states to try to start jumping on board. So I think if we get to this summer and a few states start to have this in place and there isn't a national rule, you're going to see more and more states start to get antsy and want to try to push legislation through if they have the opportunity to do that. But I think it's still very unlikely that we get to the start of football season without some kind of national rule being put in place. Once these states start to go into effect, I think there will be an even greater sense of urgency and a realization that people really need to figure this thing out. There's still a couple big things sort of left to shake out about how some of the legal machinations of all this might play out in the next few months. But I would expect that the NCAA, even if Congress doesn't act, will want to put in at least some kind of temporary rule so that you don't have a situation where half the teams in a given conference might have an opportunity to make money and their competitors wouldn't.
And Dan, how much is it going to be in favor of the players to have Congress kind of institute something? Because we know if the NCAA institutes something, it's going to still benefit the NCAA. How much do the players going to need? Obviously a higher jurisdiction to kind of make NCAA fall in line with that.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting sort of game of leverage and negotiation going on right now with some people in Congress who want to provide as many opportunities as possible to the athletes and say basically you can't put any restrictions at all on the type of money that athletes could make from third parties. I remember we're not talking about making money directly from a school at this point, but the NCAA wants to sort of restrict some of the different types of endorsement deals that athletes might be allowed to do. And the longer that they wait to act, the less leverage and the less negotiating power that they get to try to dictate what these regulations might be moving forward in the future. But all that stuff, those details of exactly what players will be allowed to do and what they won't be allowed to do is yet to be seen on a national level. And on a state-by-state level, it's fairly similar what players are allowed to do, but there are little differences and little nuances in each one, which is a big part of the scenario that the NCAA is trying to avoid, right? They don't want somebody going to Florida because they can make money right away, whereas if you go to Georgia, the rule there is you have to keep money in a bank account, in a savings account until you finish your school. And there's all these sort of little differences and nuances that they want to avoid so that everybody's playing on an equal playing field.
And Dan, I know obviously with states that already have this legislation on the books, have you been able to talk to any student athletes or athletes in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, where they already have it set to go into effect July 1, already preparing for the fact that, hey, I might be able to have a deal in place July 1?
Well, yeah, not just the athletes, but the schools themselves at this point are signing up to figure out, okay, how much can we help our athletes? What kind of resources can we provide to them? What do we have to do to make sure that we're all buttoned up so when these deals start to happen, we know how to keep track of them? I don't know. Right now, athletes still aren't really allowed to have contracts in place or be setting up deals right now or hire agents. Once July 1 comes along, a lot of these states, the law also includes allowing an athlete to hire an agent to help with them. I would have to imagine that some of those conversations are happening, behind the scenes a little bit, and handshake deals are starting to be arranged for players that might be in line to make some money. I think the schools are gearing up for this, and I think there are probably plenty of athletes who are seeing this opportunity and trying to figure out how best to take advantage of it. It's confusing right now because all the details aren't worked out. I think the athletes that I hear from are excited about the opportunity, but honestly getting a little bit frustrated that this has been talked about for so long, but it's still not really clear to anybody exactly what they'll be allowed to do and how they'll be able to do it.
The NCAA obviously has seen a lot of change in recent years. How has their perspective, I guess, changed, and how do they view all of this, and how do they view, I guess, this new iteration of amateurism?
Yeah, so over the past decade, really, there's been a series of different lawsuits and different efforts that the NCAA has slowly sort of changed their rules to provide more and more to athletes, prompted by a lot, mostly lawsuits to this point. But this most recent change, the NCAA has acknowledged that it's time to start allowing players to make money from their name, image, and likeness, that's something that they should be able to do. But they wanted the big complication that's making this tough for them to figure out is they want to make sure that when an athlete gets paid for doing an advertisement for a local car dealership or restaurant or something like that, that they're making the money that the car dealership would normally pay to somebody to do that, and not just paying them because they happen to be a good quarterback or a good wide receiver or whatever it may be. And that's the part they haven't really figured out, how to assess what the fair market value of some of these things will be, because they don't want to turn it into just a way to pay guys to show up to play on your particular team.
And then obviously when people hear name and image likeness, the first thing they think of is football, because that's going to make the most money for the school. But I'm thinking about like track. I'm thinking about like soccer, to where you have players, you have international players. You got players that ain't even from America. Have they even thought about the fact that this is going to go, well beyond what we know of, in America? We can go recruit overseas and have players come play at these schools. You're going to have to factor that in as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of different ways, right? Everybody thinks of the star football player or basketball player, right, as being able to take advantage of that. But, from conversations I've had with a lot of people in the marketing world, there are opportunities there for all kinds of different athletes. And it's not just being in a McDonald's or a Coke commercial or something like that that's out there, right? Players might be able to give speeches back at their old hometown Rotary clubs or something like that. They might be able to make money off of signing autographs or teaching lessons to local kids, that types of things they wouldn't be able to do right now. And you bring up the international student piece. That's another interesting piece of it. That there will be some interesting debate there about the visas that international students come over on are student visas, and if they're starting to come over and make money, is that going to throw a wrench in the plans of how those athletes are currently processed through the NCAA system? So I think every leaf you turn over in discussing this, you can find another 5 or 6 rabbit holes to try to jump down to sort through all the details here, which is why it's taking a while for them to figure out exactly how to go about this. But again, yeah, I mean, on top of, like you said, the obvious, football and basketball stars, there are a ton of different athletes who could stand to benefit in a large variety of different ways once this kind of goes into effect this summer.
In terms of schools managing this, Dan, are you going to see schools try to, I guess, handle it in-house with, I don't know, a sports information director type marketing person or team, or are you going to see more schools partner with outside agencies?
I think a lot of the latter, right? There are some schools that have tried to set up internal systems, whether it's, their compliance department will play a big role no matter what, making sure that they're keeping track of what all the athletes are making. There'll be some sort of social media teams and stuff like that from inside of the athletic departments that'll be trying to help players. But we've seen an onslaught of new companies in the past year who are signing up to help schools in a variety of ways there, and also help athletes. It's becoming sort of the next phase of the recruiting's arms race, right? It's not just that you need a great locker room anymore or a great weight room or training facility. The next thing that people are already starting to pitch to the next wave of recruits coming through these schools is, hey, we're going to help you build up your personal brand. So when that faucet is turned on and you're allowed to start making money out of it, we're going to make sure that you've done everything you can to make the most out of those opportunities. And a lot of schools have already signed up with companies that specialize in trying to help players maximize their value while they're in college.
I mean, Dan, I've seen a team like Florida State. They already partnered with Apex. They got some type of class to kind of help these student athletes understand, what branding and name and image like it is. I understand how they want this to be as organized as possible, but how chaotic could this thing potentially come? Because it doesn't matter if I go to Florida, if I go to the FIU, I want my money, and I don't think that the guy at a bigger school deserves more than me.
Yeah, I think it'll be, there will certainly be some degree of chaos. And I think most of the people who have been working on this for a couple of years that I've talked to have sort of come to accept that there's this brand new marketplace opening up, and no one knows exactly how much money might be available to that, how many people might be interested in paying athletes moving forward. There will be a lot of creative people trying to find different ways to make this work and find different ways to get money into the hands of athletes as these doors open, and different loopholes to be poked at and tried to discover. And I think, honestly, the smartest way that I've heard people go about this is, let's put in some basic structure to begin with here as things start to roll out. And then on top of that, have a group ready to monitor what's going on and adjust the rules as needed. One of the nuances of the Alabama law that was just passed is that they have a 7-person commission that's written into part of the law that as this evolves and as things change, this group is going to be sort of paying attention and studying up on how this is all playing out, and suggesting new rules and new tweaks into how that's going to happen in the future.
Finally, you mentioned it earlier, Dan. I wanted to ask you, how is the NCAA or how are schools going to go about evaluating what fair market value is, or is that just an impossibility to know at this point?
So to a certain extent, it's impossible to do, right? There's no precedent for how much the quarterback at Alabama is worth to a local Tuscaloosa dealership, and there's no great way to figure that out. There are some metrics available that the NCAA would love to put in place, but right now I think it's more likely that they have to sort of let this play out for a year or two, and then try to decide if there are certain outliers or certain things that are just blatantly different than what everybody else is getting. They might be able to shine a light on that and say, hey, that's not really in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. We're not going to allow that to continue in the future. But that's been, I think, the biggest hang up and the toughest thing for people involved in the college sports industry to try to figure out, of how do you make sure that athletes, you're being fair to athletes and giving them every opportunity they can, while also making sure that this isn't just an easy way for a booster to slide $100,000 into somebody's pocket if they want them to show up at a school.
Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. And again, you can see this piece on ESPN.com. Very informative. Got a breakdown of which states have already passed laws. I know here in our state, Georgia has some potential upcoming legislation here in the 2021 session that they're trying to get passed as well. You can find out about all the different states and what they're trying to get done there in the story. Dan, really appreciate the time. Great piece. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Dan Murphy, ESPN.com. And again, go to ESPN.com for that piece. It's just a wealth of information about what's already been passed, what potentially is on the horizon. And as you and Ben said, BJ, I mean, they don't They got to get some semblance of what's going on, or this thing could be a mess. If you have 15 states that have something passed, a bunch of others that don't, some that have legislation pending, and it seems like the can's not getting kicked down the road. This thing is getting fast tracked towards somebody having to make a decision real soon.
I mean, I'm just saying we'll see what happens. I just think that, I mean, the one thing he said, there is no way to judge fair market value. Kevin, I am going to be talking to, Kevin Thomas Jr. in the next 10 years, saying, listen, my son could potentially go pro, or he can go play for y'all. Well, I mean, we don't know. I'm just saying like that. This is going to change recruiting in a way that people don't want to talk about because, I mean, fair market value. He's the number one player in the country. Got to mean something, right? Wow.
Yeah. It's hard to know what the market is until there's a market, period. We got more to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday afternoon. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us. Plenty to get to next hour. Take 3 right around the corner. We'll also look at how quarterbacks, we're going to have a lot of quarterbacks drafted high this year, including Trevor Lawrence. How have the quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall fared once they were drafted number 1 overall? We'll rank some of those guys coming up next hour as well. And Gary Sheffield talking bad about baseball. One of the greats of the game says, look, can't watch it. We'll break down some of his comments there as well. But a little quick history, guys. On this date, 20 years ago, speaking of number 1 quarterbacks, Falcons take Mike Vick, number 1 in the draft.
Wow, you're talking about. I mean, has there been a more electrifying athlete? I mean, when you think, Ben, you're saying, I know you had a Vick jersey in college, Ben. I mean, you're talking about one of the most just exciting players of all time.
Michael Vick is the man. I love Matty Ice, but at the end of the day, Kevin, I don't know what Kevin became an Atlanta Falcons fan, probably before you and me, BJ. But I know when the Atlanta Falcons was at their highest, and I remember the man had a commercial called the Michael Vick Experience. That's it. You want to know what it's like to be Michael Vick? Get in this machine and move all around. Hey, listen, Vick is the greatest, man. If you don't make it into Canton, shame on the NFL Hall of Fame committee.
And again, Michael Vick, we were talking before the show, maybe the first time when I was that people actually cared about cared about the Falcons. We've got more to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Good to have you back. Hour 2, 3 and out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll look at, obviously, a number of quarterbacks talked about there at the top of this year's draft. We'll look at the number one overall quarterback taken in each draft, or the number one overall quarterback taken since 2009, and kind of how their college career lined up prior to going into the National Football League. So a lot to get to here in hour number 2. Also look at Gary Sheffield kind of having some things to say about where he thinks the state of baseball is right now and more. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, BJ and Ben, take 1. Are you concerned about Devonta Smith's combine weight? 6 foot 0.2. Is that supposed to be 2? What is that? In 2/10? 6 foot and 2/10 of an inch? 166 pounds playing wide receiver.
Yeah, I have apprehension. I mean, just because that's what normally 40 pounds, 30 pounds at least, less than what most wide receivers are. And you have, many wide receivers out there now that are, 210, 215, 225. You're talking about an era where safeties in the NFL, and certainly Smith went up against NFL defenses every week in the SEC, but you're still going up against safeties in the league that might be, again, 215, 220, 225, built like linebackers. And you just worry about it. It's not necessarily one hit, I don't think. It's hit after hit after hit wearing on his body. Now, the counter argument is he had maybe the greatest season ever in college football history and did it in an SEC-only schedule, and then went up against, the best of the best in the playoff and still did it and was still effective to a historic level. And I understand that, but do I have some concern? Yeah, I'd have to say yes.
I'm very concerned because BJ, while he did have the best season, he was also on the best team. He also was better than most guys he went up against every single time he went out there on the field. That's not going to be the case, as you mentioned. If you're giving up, just say he wanted to be 190. That's still almost 30 pounds that he's giving up. And it's not so much how big he is, it's who he's going up against. You got DBs that are 200 plus now, 6'2", that can go out there and run with the best of them. While he's always been his size, while he's always been a guy like even when he won his Heisman, he was talking about telling people that look, it's not how big you are. And I understand that he's played at that size his whole career. The problem is he's usually better than those around him while playing at that size. That's not gonna be the case now. Look, first time for everything. I'm rooting for him, but what's the first thing they talk about? They talk about guys having to put on some muscle. I mean, he can gain 20 pounds. He's still 180, 186. So I just think that while he's going to have to definitely prove people wrong like he's been doing, the grind of a now 17-game season, not even 16, he's a rookie, and he's going to have to survive on the outside. When Jalen Ramsey walk out, he's going to be looking straight at him in his face. Jalen Ramsey's all of 6'2", about 210, and can run. So I'm rooting for him, and I know you got a bunch of former quarterback coming out saying I played with a bunch of guys that was 200 pounds that couldn't get open. When's the last time you threw to a receiver that wasn't 200 pounds? It's not many.
All right, moving on. Take 2. Fans from the European soccer leagues, especially the Premier League, were obviously protesting the formation of the new Super League, so much so they forced the league to crumble and to stop. Which sports league do you think has the most passionate fans?
Soccer. And I think it's, overseas, primarily. I know you have the MLS here, but I think the passion that soccer fans have is just a lot. And I know you can talk about the SEC. Certainly, Ben, you live that in college football. I think it's up there. I think there are certain NFL cities where the passion is off the charts as well. In America, I think I would probably say college football, just because it's amazing. The season is one thing, but the passion around the off season, spring ball, recruiting, everything, prognostications, my team's ranked 17th and not 14th. It's absurd. I mean, it's constant. It's never ending, but around the globe, I would say just the support for soccer.
It is soccer. It is soccer. I know Kevin can't stand it like soccer. It is.
They have nothing else.
No.
A bunch of sports. They have soccer.
Kevin goes, give them some variety, and I bet you they go with, but I do agree. I think it is college football in America. Like in America, I think it is college football. Now, have I lived in places where college football, isn't the creme de la creme? Yes, and that's why I don't live there anymore, because I don't understand that. I don't understand what else is going on, but college football is so deeply rooted. It's so much more than just watching your team play. It's more about I can't stand the other fan base. Like it becomes you would ask a Georgia fan about the Florida fans. Like we don't ask about Georgia. I think that BJ creating that. Well, sometimes it really is hate, but creating that hatred for each other, that just genuine dislike for each other, and then you get to go out there and play the game, bragging rights. So because so much is on the line. I think it is college football, but internationally though, oh my God, it ain't even cool. But like Kevin said, there's nothing else. So it's not like they're competing against another sport. That's all they have.
Just saying. Now, I would say in America, it's probably the NFL. I know you said college football, and people will hate me for that, but I think college football is definitely in the South and maybe select schools at other spots. But I think by and large, I don't put college football there because Alabama and Auburn don't care if USC exists. Like that, like their passion is for their school and for the SEC. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to say it's the NFL fan because like you have fan bases who are body dropping on tables in the parking lot waiting to watch their team play. You have 20 and 30,000 people show up in a city they don't live in to watch a dude in a suit go with the 287th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Jim Smith out of Wisconsin. Boom! Right there, they want to fight people over who your team picks to play. So NFL fans are a little nuts. I've yet to see college football fans show up to boo who signs with their school. Like we haven't seen that, at least not yet. So it's NFL fans in the United States for sure. All right, take three. This came from Greeny earlier on the radio today, talking about championship teams and teams that are just so good. It may not matter if like Joe Blow was on there. So we're like, which championship team from any major sport or era could have put you in the starting lineup and they still win?
For you and me, Kevin, this is absolutely absurd. This is an absurd question because the answer is there is not a team. Okay. Keep in mind, no. Okay. On the football field, and maybe you could do a little more than me, but on the football field, not only would I be a liability, I would be like a dangerous liability. Like I would get hurt to the extent, it would be serious and I couldn't do anything good. There's nothing good that I could do. Okay. You talk about basketball. I mean, who am I defending if I'm on the floor? Right? No, it does matter because you have to account for not only you not doing anything, which I do think that alone you could manage, but then who you're defending, what they're able to do. So that's out of the question. Maybe you could say baseball and just get me out of the field and let me DH and just go 0 for 5 every single time, and maybe the team could still win, but you'd be such a hole in the lineup. Like if I hit 500 times, I would get on base 0 times, literally 0 times. And I don't think you can overcome that. So no, the answer is no.
Come on, have a little focus.
This is easy.
Hold on a second, Ben. I know it's easy for you. How many times would you get on base with 500 at bats there, Chipper?
I don't need to. That's the whole point. Put me on the 27 Yankees. We're getting that ring, baby. Like it doesn't matter. Put me in right field. It's fine. I'll pick up a ground ball. I'll go up there and take my hacks, and we're still going to beat everybody. I got Babe Ruth. I'm good. I got, I think Gehrig on that team. I'm good. Put me on the 96 Bulls. I'll stand in the corner. I'll stand next to Phil Jackson. I'll be on the court, but I'll stand next to Phil Jackson. And I don't need to guard anybody. I got Rodman. I got Scotty. I got Michael Jordan.
What about if you have to, dribble
I don't need to dribble. Michael Jordan will tell me, get out of the way. I'll be like, at the end of the playoffs, he's like, everybody go stand in the corner and watch me drop 60. That's what he's going to do. I'm winning a championship with the 96 Bulls.
For me, this is easy. The 2019 LSU Tigers. I go straight to Thaddeus Moss, BJ stats. I don't care about the 47 catches. I don't care about the 570 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. Did they need his 4 touchdowns? No. He scored 4, and he got single covered every play. Listen, I'm saying throw it to Marshall, double digits. Throw it to Jeffrey, Jefferson, throw it. And Jamar Chase wanted to blend the call. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Who cares? True. What we need from you today? Listen, man, my job is to be a good teammate. Make sure it's 11 on 11. If you throw me the ball, that's your fault. Think about this, BJ. Has 47 catches, 570 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Have ever not been needed more than Thaddeus Moss's? Did they need him? Was there ever a game you go, dude, Thaddeus, we need you to go out here and ball? No. Jefferson had more touchdown catches in the first half of I think it was the college football playoff semifinal that Thaddeus Moss had all year. So all I'm saying is, BJ, the fact that I'm not going to get drafted because obviously I'm the starter, the backup got drafted. But yeah, put me on that 2019 LSU type of team. I'm going to go out there, make a couple of catches, try to it's not going to matter. It's really, really the one touchdown pass that I remember Thaddeus Moss making, the nice one on the sideline, but they threw him a touchdown pass in the SEC championship game because no one covered him. Like, they literally did not cover him, not because he's not good, because, we're trying to double, we're trying to double Jefferson, we're trying to double Marshall, we're trying to double Chase. So I'm thinking 1,500 yards, Russia. Three receivers over double digit touchdowns, one with 20, the other with 18, I think another one like 11. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had more catches than me. Put me on that 2019, I'm good.
BJ, that first great run by the Golden State Warriors. You had Draymond and Steph just raining it down, and there's BJ standing in the corner. You don't need to rebound. They're not missing. You don't need to defend. It's fine. They're scoring 138 points.
You're 20% of the lineup, man. You're going to have to defend somebody. Okay, maybe.
You can't stand in somebody's way for half a second until Draymond gets over there and swats. It's fine, BJ. You're way overthinking this.
No, maybe you take the best team in baseball and say, hey, I'll be in the bullpen, and I'm the guy that only pitches. You know how sometimes late in games when you're losing like 19-2 and you put in a shortstop to pitch? I'll be that guy.
You have to be a starter to be with
starter. Not happening. Not happening.
You must be a starter.
I like how Kevin said, listen, okay, you don't think I can make it to baseball? Let me show you the basketball team. The Bulls.
Christian, stand up here. I want to hear what your answer to this question would be, because I know I'm making you come over here and talk, but listen, am I being athletically arrogant by saying I can stand there and not do anything and still win?
In what sport?
Like I said, the 96 Bulls.
Yes.
No.
Yes,
I
Kevin.
get somebody's way.
You're literally 20% of the team. Like, they're not winning those
And you
games.
know who's the other 20 that they're missing?
That's fine.
Michael Jordan's 80%
Kevin,
by himself. It's
Kevin,
fine.
Did they sweep all those games? No. Literally with 100.
Oh, my God.
No,
they didn't lose in the finals.
No. Are you going to bring me on the mic and let me talk? Or are you going to bring me on the mic and talk over me? Literally.
Both.
No, literally in the series, they had 100% NBA players on those teams.
Yep.
Right? 100%. Right? And there was close games. You take 20% of an NBA player away from it, they're losing that game.
Okay.
The only sport.
MJ just had to step his game up.
The only sport where this is maybe feasible is baseball. But your team needs to know, look, guys, if they hit one into left field and old KT Blazers out there, it's a run. They're scoring runs.
Listen, you're forgetting something very important. You're forgetting something. Kevin throws an 80-mile-an-hour fastball.
Never said that.
BJ, I don't care if Kevin throws 120-mile-an-hour fastball. Kevin has to get to the ball.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
Yeah, he's got to get to it. If they hit one over his head,
could I play first base?
If they hit it over his face, you can't play first base, Kevin.
Why can't I play first base?
When was the last time you stretched? Every 90% of the balls that get thrown your way because they're whipping them and Freddie Freeman has to stretch like a spider. That's in the first ball of the stands. You're not getting anywhere near that.
Got to bring it down.
Nowhere near that. Kevin, no, you can't.
This is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. And it's a Kevin.
Stand in left field.
I'm hitting zero, but I
you're gonna say you're in the left.
This is what I'm here for today, people. What about first base? Okay, so I'm not in the outfield. What about first?
I think the better question is, Kevin, could you start on the team you coach? Could you start at first base?
Oh, Kevin's taking those kids deep.
Probably not at this juncture, but no.
Like, Kevin, you would literally tear everything in your groin if you tried to stretch out for Austin Riley wild throw over the first base that Freddie Freeman makes look routine.
Am I just going out there cold? I don't get any like build up.
It doesn't matter if you warm up for a week. You're tearing everything in your groin. Everything.
Kevin, you suffered a catastrophic leg injury playing office basketball.
When was the last time you stretched your leg? I'm trying to do like my geometry here. When was the last time your legs were spread further than? I want to know the answer to this now that I'm asking it. But they were spread more than 20%, like a 20-degree angle. When was the last time?
On that note, we'll come back. It's 3 now across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Looking at quarterbacks, a draft coming up a little bit more than a week. Actually, a week from tomorrow, we'll hear Trevor Lawrence. Zach Wilson's name's called pretty early, but looking at the quarterbacks that have been drafted number 1 overall since 2009, let's take a look at their college careers and see where they stack up. Now that we threw Trevor Lawrence in here because I think we can all assume that he's going to go number 1 at this point. It's all but been officially said. But the quarterbacks in play here, guys, you got Matt Stafford in 2009, Sam Bradford, Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, and Trevor Lawrence, who will be, as I said, drafted number 1 overall, all going number 1 in the draft. How would you rank them in terms of how their college careers played out before they got to that number 1 overall spot?
Really tough. I mean, you're talking about legends of the game. You're talking about record setters, championship winners. This is really, really difficult. And I've gone back and forth on this. I could go either way. I'm okay with either. I would go Joe Burrow 1, Cam Newton 2. I could certainly go Cam 1, Joe 2. I think they're both interchangeable. They're the clear leaders, the clear 1 and 2. That just lasting impression, Ben, with Joe Burrow for me. In his last 2 games, the college football playoff games, obviously, he had 493 yards passing and 463 yards passing. He had 8 touchdowns in one game and 6 in the other. So in the 2 college football play at over 50 yards in total touchdowns.
I think we're having some trouble there with BJ, but yeah, you're looking at their college career as a whole, not necessarily just their one season, but I think you look at a couple of items here, Ben. Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, 2 on this list that did not win the Heisman Trophy. So, I mean, if you're looking at just career accolades there, they would slide down this list. After that, you look at the careers, I think Kyler Murray, to me, slides down. Didn't have the longevity of some of the other guys. the Oklahoma quarterbacks are kind of interesting. I think Baker Mayfield needs to be the highest one from Oklahoma on that list, simply because I think he did more, meant more to the college game, had a better career, if you will, than Bradford and Kyler Murray did. So I think when you start, I know it's tough at the top, but you start looking at some of these quarterbacks, I think Stafford, Goff, to me, slide down to the bottom of the list. I think Kyler Murray, Sam Bradford, slide down a little, maybe right before those 2 guys, and then you start dissecting who's left on this list. Just my two.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'm actually going to go that way. I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top. I mean, listen, Jared Goff, I got him at the very bottom for the simple fact that he was the number 1 because of default. I mean, even going back to that draft, there was like, well, dude, somebody like who's going to go number 1? I mean, it was going to be him or Carson Wentz. Well, obviously, because Carson Wentz, I think, went to North Dakota State, and obviously, Jared Goff went to Cal. They're gonna go with Jared Goff. Then I'm gonna go with Matthew Stafford. While Matthew Stafford did go number 1 overall, I can't remember much about that. I mean, I know Matthew Stafford was good at Georgia, but when we started talking about what his contributions like in the SEC, they was all right. Now, I'm gonna go Baker Mayfield after that. I got Baker Mayfield, then I got Kyler Murray. I think it was harder for Kyler Murray because of what was set by Baker Mayfield. Like, if people think, we're never gonna see a season like that. Kyler Murray come right behind him and supersede what he just did when everybody kind of knew like Oklahoma was kind of like on the map right there as far as like the quarterback play. Then I'm gonna go Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck did not win the Heisman, but when Andrew Luck was at Stanford, I mean, the kid was good. And I always look at it like this. I need a reason to watch Pac-12 football. Like, I need a reason to watch. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, I need a reason to watch, and it doesn't get. I mean, Stanford got the same color scheme as like Penn State, except one of it is blue, the other one's like their reddish color. Just give us a jersey. Let's get out there. I remember Andrew Luck being really, really good at Stanford as far as like getting those guys like national attention. Then I'm gonna go with Sam Bradford. I mean, Sam Bradford did, he did make it to the national championship. I mean, he was supposed to be the next great one. Like, when you talk about the great quarterbacks, he was supposed to be it. And this kid is going to be like, the next Peyton Manning when he get in the NFL. Obviously, injuries derailed that. Then I'm going to go Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston lost one game in college football. He lost one. It was a bad one against Marcus Mariota, but and those guys in Oregon. But Jameis Winston was about as good as advertised. I mean, we talk about Florida State and those. And if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken, Florida State broke the streak of the SEC winning the national championship. I think the SEC won like 7 in a row. They broke it against Auburn. So I mean, Jameis Winston's incredible college football career. Then I'm gonna go with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, wow! Like when you talk about he lost 2 games and winning the national championship as a true freshman, because if I'm not mistaken, BJ, Jameis Winston was a redshirt freshman when he won it. So to do it as a true freshman, I mean, the guy, I mean, he's been the face of college football since he's been there the last 3 years. I got Joe Burrow number 2 because while Joe Burrow did some things, but I look at that surrounding cast has to matter. The Blitnikoff, you got 2 other guys over double-digit touchdowns, 1,500 yard rusher, and for me, the best of the bunch is Cam. I mean, Cam was Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the 1,500 yards rushing. He gave you 30 touchdown passes, and to this day, I don't know nobody who played on that offense with him. I mean, nobody. Down by 21 against Alabama to win. I'm just saying, Cam Newton, like, because when I think about some of these guys on this list, like a guy like Kyler Murray, guys who like utilize both their legs and their feet, I just think Cam is just a notch above the rest. I love what Joe Burrow did. He utilized. Cam didn't have an offensive coordinator that just came back from the NFL.
Cam's interesting because he did it in just the one season at Auburn, whereas you said a couple of these guys had.
And we judged Joe Burrow what he did his senior year, not his junior year.
Yeah, Christian, what you got?
Well, I was just going to say, I do think we need to take into effect the career arc of it, because I think we're underrating Baker Mayfield.
Sure.
And where his career was. And then I think we're underrating Trevor Lawrence and all this too. Like, again, didn't go to the college football playoff, won a national championship, beat Alabama, and won ACC championships every year he was in there. But I will not stand for Andrew Luck slander in here, Ben. Don't think he did a lot in college. How about 12-1 as a sophomore, and then 11-2 as a senior? Finished second place in the Heisman voting twice. Once to Cameron Newton, and the second time to RG3. I will not stand for
this is not Andrew Luck slander. I said,
but you didn't think he did
about the uniforms. They got a tree on they like.
Did he not did a lot in college?
What, the Redwoods? What is it? The Redwoods?
Well, no, Vince said Andrew Luck was real.
I did. I said Andrew Luck. I said he gave me a reason to watch the Pac-12 because since he's left, UCLA and USC, they have their rivalry game on Friday night.
You slandered him on second down. You're slandering him on 3 and out.
Well, we haven't given BJ a turn to slander Andrew Luck. Just go ahead.
My dearest mother, Andrew Luck.
I stand.
Well, I mean, I want to be clear here, Kevin. You talk about this all the time. When you're ranking greatness, just because you come in at 5, 6, or 7 does not mean you're bad. It means you're great and you're right up there with other great players, but you're a step below. I mean, that's the way the list works. Somebody has to be at the bottom. I don't know when I lost internet, but I had Joe Burrow 1. Look, I can go Cam. I agree with everything you're saying, Ben. I can go back and forth. I continually go back and forth. I just look at the finish to Burrow's career. We always talk about what do you do in the college football playoff? Well, LSU scored 105 points in Burrow's 2 playoff games. He threw for 952 yards, and they scored 14 touchdowns, or he scored 14 touchdowns. He himself was responsible for 14 touchdowns.
How do you weigh out the no college football playoffs for Cam? I mean, not they weren't there, but I mean, obviously, a lot of these other guys had, like Trevor Lawrence, every year there. A lot of these other guys had trips to that Final Four that everybody was clamoring for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a different era. It's not Cam's fault. And Cam is one of the most iconic, best, greatest players of all time. If you want to, maybe if I sit down and look at some more numbers, maybe I can go one. I mean, back when I think I ranked the top 20 SEC quarterbacks of the last 20 years, I spent like 3 nights, debating Joe Burrow and Cam Newton. I'm okay going either way. I just think if you're making me pick, just because of that performance on that stage, I will go Burrow 1, Cam. Agree with everything you said, Ben. 2, I'll go Jameis Winston 3. That last loss was bad, obviously, but you look at the totality of his career. I think Baker Mayfield 4. The multiple years of proficiency. He finished his career as the most proficient passer in a single season ever. I have Sam Bradford 5. I think people forget that the year before he got hurt. He got hurt his junior year early on, but his sophomore year, he had 50 touchdowns and 5 picks. It was something absurd like that when they went to the national championship. I have Trevor Lawrence 6. And again, I think Trevor Lawrence is one of the greats, but you're stacked up with other greats. Somebody's got to, that's just the way it works. I have Trevor Lawrence in there at 6. I have Kyler Murray 7, Andrew Luck 8, Jared Goff 9, and Matthew Stafford 10. And I would say the two guys there, Goff and Stafford, are considerably behind Luck. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that as well, where Stafford was good at Georgia, but kind of took off with the Lions.
Fair to say he underperformed based off of what he was able to do physically and what he was coming as a recruit. He was still awesome. Those offenses were awesome, but I think that's absolutely fair to say he's probably not even top 5 ever as a Georgia quarterback.
Well, we maybe debate that for another show. That's going to be we'll get back into that. We'll come back. We'll debate what Gary Sheffield had to say. He was taking a gander, I guess, at baseball and kind of had some thoughts. We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back, Kevin, BJ, and Ben here on this Wednesday. Braves tonight against the Yankees. We'll have pregame for you starting at 5:20 here this afternoon. But a lot of folks talking about the state of baseball and where it's at. I know the big push from fans is like, hey, it'd be nice to not have blackouts trying to watch my favorite team wherever I may be and be able to watch, actually watch baseball. Imagine that concept. But Gary Sheffield, he's a guy that, has done postseason baseball, has been a studio analyst for postseason baseball, came out and told CBS Sports Radio, I don't watch baseball at all. I was kind of forced to watch baseball because I was working with TBS, so I had to really find out who were these players. I'll tell you the secret now. I never watched the games during the season. I'll get educated on when I got there. It's not something I can watch based on what I'm seeing because I'll be a complainer. This is the first time I've ever said that out loud, but just disappointed with what I watch. He said it was exciting when I was playing. They've implemented all these rules now. They've changed the game so much to make it more hitter-friendly. Even without having success, these guys can go out there and strike out 180 to 190 times, which in Gary Sheffield's day was just a cardinal sin. You are a not good baseball player if you did that, and it's okay to finish that quote. And then all of a sudden they show a home run. Now a home run is less appealing. When a home run was a big deal, more appealing when I played because it wasn't happening as often as it is now. That's the way the game is played today. That doesn't mean I have to watch it. End quote there from Gary Sheffield. Does he have legitimate points about the product, or is he an old guy yelling at a cloud?
I mean, I certainly understand and respect his perspective. I'll say this, and I've told you this, Kevin. I don't like the new extra innings stuff. Understand that baseball's trying to speed the game up or compartmentalize it or whatever. But the Braves have had a couple of extra innings games already where that just starting it out with a runner on second, that makes it hard to watch for me. I don't like it. I don't understand it. It doesn't feel like baseball to me. So I don't necessarily get into the how many times guys are striking out or home runs or kind of the efficiency of the game as much as obviously someone who played it. But for me, I will just being honest, say that the new extra innings rule with the runner on second has turned me off. I'm not interested in it. It makes me less excited about extra innings, less interested than I previously have been.
I mean, he definitely sounds like an old man for the whole. I mean, and think about this, Kevin. I mean, BJ, we always talk about this. We are doing our best to not become that thing we used to despise. Like Gary Sheffield used to, when he came into the league, this is what guys were saying, right? But the game has evolved. I mean, Kevin, yes, no one likes it. Like right now, we don't like the fact that, if you go in extra innings, you already got a guy on second until it benefits your team. Like, I don't like it, but, I mean, we won the game. Gary Sheffield now, he was a great player, too. He's not just an average player saying this. If he was a nobody, no one would care what he's talking about. But it took Gary Sheffield a little bit of time to gain that superstar status. These guys now, rookies, Aaron Judge and these guys, Ronald Acuna Jr. been in the league 3 years, already talking about being the face of the league. I think he's talking about the fact that, dude, it's kind of like what Charles Barkley said about today's basketball players. They don't care about winning championships. Do you see how much money they make? Who cares if they win the championship? They get to add to their legacy. But the game has evolved, Kevin, and I think that's with anything. I understand. Like I said, BJ and Kevin, if you ever see me walking around with my T-shirt tucked in, I'm officially my father. It has happened because my daddy does that. And it's like the great Mark Douglas, the voice, ESPN Coastal. When Mark said he told his kids, "Turn that music down," you are officially old. Like old for a man happens just like that. It's not over. You'll do something, and you let yourself know, Gary Sheffield, you are. Kevin, weren't you at like somewhere like at a baseball tournament, he was there or something like that? Him and somebody else was there.
It was his son and Manny Ramirez's son were playing like a field over, and somebody said, "Oh, you just missed him," and I was like,
"Oh, I can
appreciate that, man." It's like what I do for a living, right? Like I'm kind of interested in that, but no, I think baseball is at a conflict with what is interesting and what is driving the sport. I know at one point it was, hey, home runs. People love home runs. But you also, I think this is why you're seeing, I forget which league is doing it, but this summer they're experimenting post All-Star break in one of the minor leagues, moving the mound back, I think a foot, just to see what it does to offense. Because I do think you're seeing a proliferation of dudes that throw 100 miles an hour. It's harder to hit the ball for sure, which means you get less ball in play action in a lot of games. However, I think access to baseball for fans is something that's a problem with blackouts and people trying to watch their teams on the apps like, oh, sorry, you're blacked out. No, I paid you. I want to watch baseball. And I saw someone the other day say that the MLB app broke records for number of people on the stream when you've had a couple of no-hitters. So people are saying, well, that's games where there's literally no offense happening. And there's people tuning in to check out those things. So I think baseball's kind of at a crossroads of, one, how do you market yourself? Obviously, you have the old school of, hey, quit bat flipping. And then you got a lot of folks who say, hey, that's some passion. That's some excitement that the game needs. But then at the same time, for every bit of that, you have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 strikeouts a night, pretty regular in Major League Baseball. And that's not really action happening either. So I think baseball is kind of at an interesting crossroads as to how do you get more offense in the game and maybe do it in an authentic way as well. So I get what Gary Sheffield's saying. Hey, it's all about the home run and you strike out 200 times and hit 220 and hey, I hit my 30 dingers. So it's all good. I kind of get what he's saying there, but I think the younger generation doesn't necessarily really care about that. I think whereas guys who are of his ilk, Chipper Jones, by and large, guys are like, hey, if I can hit 300, I'm a dude. I'm one of the best guys out here. Where I think sometimes younger players are now, it's like, it's launch angle. How hard am I hitting the ball and how many times am I putting it over the fence? That's what I care about.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch sports change. I mean, to me, it feels weird still to see an offense go out and throw it 50, 55 times in a college football game. Like for me, I think about running the football and playing defense. That's just, I guess, the era I grew up in with college football to a certain extent. So that, the wide open passing attack still feels a little different to me. But I want to ask you this specifically about baseball, Kevin, because it's something that I struggle with, and I don't want to be naive. I understand the media aspect of it, but I really do not enjoy this extra inning thing. I think I've told you and Christian, and like it feels manufactured and fake and kind of just off base to me. And to me, one of the appealing aspects of baseball has been that there's no clock. That's been one of the neat, unique things about it, is that you play frames, you play innings, you don't play the clock. And I mean, I think we all kind of can appreciate that, whether you're, listening to the game, out at the beach or out in the yard or whatever. It's kind of part of summer, right? It's like, that's what I kind of fell in love with baseball through is the idea that it's unique in the way it's played. Why would you try to change something that is so fundamental to the sport in terms of what makes it unique?
That part I don't know, but I think as a lot of trying to speed up the game is all media partners, right? You're trying to fit games into windows and all that. And I'm sure the players don't like having to play, 18, 19, 20 inning games that happen every once in a blue moon and end up finishing at 2:00 in the morning. But I do think those are the fun outliers. I'm trying to think of all the games that I've heard about going to extra innings this year. I don't think any of them have really gone to the 11th inning. Like somebody has scored. I mean, if you got a runner on second, you can figure out Major League Baseball teams usually how to get a run if you're in the top half of the inning. It's kind of like, college football where you go back and forth and it's a defensive struggle. I think we saw this a couple years ago. What was it? Duke, Wake, or Virginia Tech, Wake was 0-0. But, you get in some of these defensive struggle games, and then it's like, okay, well, now we're at the end of the game. We're just going to put the ball on the 25. Well, okay, now you're going to score. That kind of negates my biggest advantage, which was my defense the whole game. They're in scoring position and have done nothing to earn it. And that was kind of my big beef. It still is my big beef with college football overtime is I'd like to see him move the ball back and say, look, if we're going to make this, quote unquote fair, make your offense earn it. You're not making my defense. My defense is already in a hole. My defense is already giving up 3 points more than likely in college football just based on where you set the ball down. And that's if I play elite. If I step up and 0-0-0, put the ball down, kick a field goal, they're there. I would like to see the offense earn it. Same thing in Major League Baseball. If you have great pitching and you're in extra innings and you're giving a guy on a second, I mean, that's a bloop single could cost you the game. And that doesn't cost you in any other inning when you start out clean, especially with elite pitching. So that part I agree. I don't think that's a major problem in baseball, but I do think baseball is at a crossroads of how to market itself and what kind of game do they want to be. Do they want to be an all offensive game? Well, can you be an offensive game with dudes striking out 150 times each as the norm? I don't know. I think you want to see elite hitters go out there and be elite. And I think baseball is trying to figure that out with potentially moving the mound back, giving guys another little bit split second to react to some of the stuff that's being thrown out there. It's just absolutely nasty. We'll come back. Much more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll talk more baseball. We'll talk some football with Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation. He'll join us as the FCS playoffs begin this weekend, and we'll lead you up to Braves, Yankees, game 2 of the 2-game series. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben on 3 and Out. We'll chat with Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation, coming up at the top of the final hour of the show as the FCS playoffs begin this weekend, BJ. So we still got college football going on, though it is rapidly coming to a close before we look ahead to August with a lot of these teams. We'll chat with Kevin Marshall about that coming up in just a little bit.
And the Southern Conference champion VMI in the FCS playoffs for the first time ever. And it was their first SoCon championship since 1977. So you're talking about historic success, a historic season, a year to remember. And Ben, Kevin, if you remember correctly, didn't Ben call this with VMI back at the beginning of the year? I think you were saying they were going to be better than people anticipated, and they had a year for the ages.
I think BJ is a year of teams really showing themselves to be a contender moving forward. I keep going back to what VMI was able to do in the SoCon, what Coastal Carolina was able to do in the Sun Belt. I mean, when you get used to being bottom feeders, man, you get a chance to, in a showcase season, go out there and really showcase what you was doing. I'm happy for them VMI boys. But once again, you made it into the dance. Now it's about surviving and advancing.
Certainly. And again, I wish you would remember stuff I said 5 months ago, BJ. Hey, do you remember when you said this? Yeah, I think I do. I do remember that.
No. Kevin,
right,
at the end of the day, Kevin said, look, I can play first base. I don't care what you say, Christian. I don't care what you say, BJ. I could have been with the Bulls. I could have been with the War. Kevin said,
Kevin, I remember that you said you could throw an 80-mile-an-hour fastball
Never said
at 50
that.
years old.
Never said that. That is a lie. Never said that. I didn't bring my life jacket today. I wasn't prepared to go swimming.
Oh, there it is. They're going to see. He's back in the sea again, swimming.
Yeah, the sea of lies is starting to roll up. I guess summertime is coming. Get ready to go swimming in the sea day in and day out. We'll come back. Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation, will join us. We'll talk some FCS football with him, and we will lead you up to the Braves and the New York Yankees, game 2 of their 2-game set here this evening. It'll be Ian Anderson going for the Braves. No Ronald Acuna back just yet, though it sounds like he'll be back on Friday when the Braves are back at home against Arizona. So we'll lead you up to Braves baseball and more, talk some college football when we return. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. Final hour of 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben as we lead you up to Braves and Yankees game 2 of that 2-game set. Ian Anderson going for the Braves, trying to get him back in the win column tonight. So we'll have that coming up in about 15 minutes or so from now. But we do have college football still going on. The FCS playoffs begin this weekend. And joining us here on the show from FCS Radio Nation, Kevin Marshall joins us here on 3 and Out. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good. It's a beautiful day here in Missoula, Montana. Although as a Charleston boy, I wouldn't mind being in Savannah neither, I might tell you.
Certainly understand that. And again, kind of get us up to date on how this is all playing out. I know the FCS committed to playing in the spring, committed to getting the playoffs going. And how is this going to shape up here now that we're having playoff football in late April, soon to be early May?
Look, I think that most people will agree that any time is a good time for football. And look, the fact that all the eyes are going to be on our playoff system. Look, FCS people, as Georgia Southern people were before their move up, even I think they will tell you that our playoff system is far superior than the one at the FBS level. In a normal year, 24 teams make the playoffs. This year it's 16 due to COVID. But there's something pure and refreshing and awesome about having a tournament, a bracket, and the team that wins the championship, well, they're the last team that won a football game. That'll take place on 16 May over in Frisco, Texas, and I will be there like always, and I'm looking forward to it.
Kevin, how did the at-large evaluation process work, given that you had, differences in schedules, number of games played? How were at-large candidates evaluated for the playoffs?
I wish I could tell you that I knew how that happened, but when you look at how some of the teams got in, it's interesting. You had Missouri State, who played some games in the fall, and heck, they played Oklahoma in the fall. Bobby Petrino is the coach there. I think people recognize that name. He coached Lamar Jackson at Louisville, and then he became a motorcycle aficionado at Arkansas. I think folks will recall that. But look, they played some games in the fall, and it helped them, no doubt. North Dakota State is an at-large team this year. I don't think there was any doubt that a North Dakota State team, if they had the requisite number of wins, was going to be in. North Dakota is in. Southern Illinois is in. And Eastern Washington is in. So, it's interesting to me that out of 6 at-large berths, 4 of them come from one league. But, I think it's the committee's job to pick the best teams. And the teams that got left out, most notably Samford over there in Alabama and East Tennessee State up in Johnson City, just didn't have the resume that was necessary. And some of the opt-out teams in the SoCon really hurt those two. One more victory over a good football team might have pushed them over the edge. Well, of course, we'll never know. But it's very interesting that 4 of the 6 at-large berths came from one conference. That's the Missouri Valley Football Conference.
And Kevin, as you mentioned, 16 teams this year instead of 24, which is going to make that competition even more steep. You got some usual suspects, but a newcomer that might be one of the most dangerous teams in this tournament is going to be VMI. Talk about the season they have and how good this team could be trying to survive in advance.
Look, I'm a Citadel guy, and I know that Devonta Middleton's the mayor of Savannah, right? So it's going to hurt me to talk good about VMI. But if you want to talk about a school that, very little success in the past. The last conference championship was 1977, first time in the playoffs. And VMI does a little bit differently than the other military schools do. Army, Navy, Air Force, Citadel all run the triple. Well, VMI runs the air raid, and it's been successful for them. Their defense is pretty stout. They're going to be tested by James Madison. But look, James Madison hasn't played anybody. Their best win is over Richmond, who got left out of the playoffs, and that was a game they had to schedule on the fly last week because of COVID cancellations. So James Madison is not your normal JMU type team. Are they still good? Yes. Are they still probably the most talented position by position in the playoffs? Probably. But VMI has a very good opportunity to ride in Shenandoah Valley, just 65, 66 miles from Lexington to Harrisonburg and shock FCS Nation. They really do. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a lock, but I'll tell you what, VMI is getting 2 touchdowns, and I think that's quite generous.
Kevin, what can you tell us about the level of play? I know, obviously, FCS football, people who follow say it's very good, but you had some teams play in the fall. A lot of teams didn't. Some teams played 4 games, some played 2 games, some played 1 in the fall, and some didn't. This is their first football in a year and a half that's being played. What have you seen about the level of football this year in the FCS and now leading into the playoffs after most teams had almost a year and a half off from competing?
Look, FCS football has always been very good quality football. Look, you can just look at the FBS teams that get beat by FCS teams. It happens, including some good ones. The Georgia Tech wasn't a very particular good team a couple years ago. DeSoto went up there and beat them. So it's always good quality football. And I think that the games, they look the same as they always have. When they blow the whistle, it looks like FCS football. It looks like football. It's odd not seeing places that would normally be packed to the gills, like the Fargo Dome in North Dakota State's home dome. It was weird going to the game last week at Washington Grizzly Stadium here with the University of Montana, and there'd be 5,000 people in the stands rather than 27,000 people in the stands. But once you wrap your head around the fact that, the atmosphere isn't what we're used to, the games look the same. It's blocking, it's tackling, fundamental football. It's good football, and it's played at a level that, is better than people who don't know anything about football call it Division II or whatever. That's just lazy and people who just don't know. But the FCS level football, it's good football. It's played by good players. And I think everyone who is a knowledgeable football fan knows that.
In your mind, who's the favorite to win the national championship, looking at this bracket?
A favorite, it's hard to pick, but I've always subscribed to that theory put forth by that fine gentleman from the state of North Carolina who says that to be the man, you got to beat the man. And there's no doubt that recently in the FCS, North Dakota State has been the man. I think if NDSU can get by Eastern Washington this week in the Fargo Dome, which is going to be tough for them. Eastern Washington has a quarterback named Eric Barriere, who is one of the more dynamic football players you're ever going to see. He can do it all. He'll be the fastest guy on the field, makes good decisions when plays break down. He's often better when the plays break down than on design runs. He's that good. I think NDSU has a good shot if they can get by Eastern Washington. South Dakota State, who manhandled NDSU last week, ran the ball for 300 yards against NDSU, and that just doesn't happen, and held them to 97 rushing yards, which, NDSU lines up and runs the power right down your throat. They don't care if you know it's coming. That's been the key to their success. Plus, pretty good quarterback play, right? With Wentz and Easton Stick and now Trey Lance. So, Lance is obviously not playing in this spring. But I like North Dakota State. I also like South Dakota State. But I think that somebody who can get there, and if they get there, has a good shot to win is Weber State out of the Big Sky Conference. They're not sexy. They win a lot of close games. But Al Davis said it, just win, baby, and that's all Weber State has done.
And again, the FCS playoffs getting started this weekend. Kevin Marshall, FCS Radio Nation, our guest here on 3 and Out. Kevin, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, man, it's always good to talk to people who talk like I do back close to where I'm from.
Hey, well, we are glad we were glad to make it happen for you. Kevin Marshall joining us here on the show. And again, FCS playoffs, BJ, I know the field is smaller, but as he said, look, if you were thinking what could it be at the major college level? I mean, FCS football is on a normal year, 21 teams. They make it work. They make it happen. And it's exciting football, and it gets started this weekend. 16-team tournament this year, but again, some excellent football being played. And as he said, North Dakota State's had 3 quarterbacks, 2, and about to have another one drafted into the National Football League high in the first round.
Well, we've all talked about this for years, right? When you hear the responses of, college football can't have an 8 or a 16 or a 24-team playoff, you look around and go, it it already does. Like, it literally already does. Look at the FCS playoffs. And certainly, Georgia Southern had historic success in that. Kevin, you're about Valdosta State guy. Look at the Division II playoffs. You already have multi-round playoff formats in place in college football, and a little bit of a smaller bracket, here with what's transpired with COVID, but really excited. And VMI going to represent the SoCon. But yeah, when you look at that bracket, I think North Dakota State, even if they haven't been as good maybe on paper as they've been in recent years, they clearly still stand out.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to get to the question with Kevin, but I also believe obviously they do it right in the FCS as far as like this tournament. But this is their showcase as well. This is the only football that's going to be going on. We will get a chance. They don't have to share the spotlight with no other conference, no other football. But I think it is going to be good. I mean, Kevin said, look, man, Kevin talked about Javante Middleton being the mayor of Savannah, speaking kindly of Citadel. But yeah, it should be some really, really good football. But I'm happy for the VMI boys. And like I always say, just because I'm late to the party, don't mean I can't be, don't mean I can't make sure that, the party stay going. Watch out for the VMI boys to try to make some noise.
And they're a good feel-good story, not only because, as you heard, they hadn't won a conference championship since the 70s, but BJ lost their quarterback who's going to go enroll at Maryland, but lost him to injury and had to go with a freshman backup, and he has led them to the playoffs. So it's been a remarkable story to follow them week in and week out. So we appreciate Kevin Marshall joining us here on the program. Also, Dan Murphy, ESPN.com. Great piece. I encourage you to go check it out on name, image, likeness, some laws that are already in place. Good teams in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, as soon as July 1, start profiting off name, image, likeness. Great piece. Encourage you to go read it there at ESPN.com. We've got Braves and Yankees game 2. Hopefully tomorrow we're talking about a Braves dub. It'll be Ian Anderson on the mound for the Braves. No Ronald Acuna, but they do expect him back in the lineup on Friday when the Braves return home to Atlanta. We will see you tomorrow, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com, YouTube. Catch the archive version of the show if you missed it. We'll talk to you soon here on 3 and Out.